that's also related to the Irish, and that the Irish undocumented wouldn't be in solidarity with the Hispanic undocumented, because as you know, we Irish think we were the only people on the map to ever have to look for asylum and place anywhere in the world. So I just find it moving. And I suppose the other thing that has kind of knocked me a bit tonight is a woman that I knew very well was killed in Guatemala yesterday. Her name was Sally O'Neill. And any of you that had any contact with Trocra, particularly may have known back in the 80s when Trocra was very much to the forefront on Latin American and human rights when Oscar Romero was killed. Sally would have been one of the forefronters in making that known to the wider world. And she was killed in a car accident yesterday in Guatemala. And it's just when you get news like that, it kind of knocked me off my focus. So anyway, just that you know, that's the context I'm coming from. I am going to try and talk about refugees and migrants, but not necessarily with all the background as to why and what and where, because you know a lot about that, but more from the lens of the challenges that it presents to us in Ireland, and particularly to us of people of faith. And that's the lens to which I will try and bring the discussion. Why isn't my thing moving? So just quickly, as you know, the forced migration of peoples around the world is at an all-time high since the Second World War. And these are UN figures, you can get them. These are mostly the ones that are cited on a global sense. Of course, you cannot get the exact figure. Nobody can, because what is counted, there's often a lot more that is uncounted. But you have 6.5 million forcibly displaced people worldwide, 22.5 million refugees, 10 million stateless people, and 55% of the refugees worldwide emanating from three main countries: South Sudan, Afghanistan, and Syria. But we all know that there are lots of other countries, but these are, and of course, women constitute at least half, if not more. There are many factors, you know, which cause people to move. We know that war and conflict are a big part of that, but poverty, socioeconomic policies, indebtedness, and of course we have climate change. People are displaced, and that will be one of the biggest factors, as well as war into the future, that will displace people in our world. So people just don't move for fun. You know, if we want to move and live, I lived in South America, it was my choice to go there. When people move, they mainly move on foot initially. And when you move on foot, you can only take with you a very limited amount. And often people make the comment that, you know, they have high phone technology, you know, that you can, and how come you can have a, you know, an iPhone or whatever? Everybody in the world today, because technology is such, have some format of communicating. So at least they're able to make contact with others. But at the end of the day, they have very little with them when they move. We in Europe pride ourselves as being open borders, and we were all, you know, welcoming and whatever after the World War, citing that we'll never see this again. But we have one of the most restrictive asylum systems here in Ireland as part of Europe. That leads to exploitation, because smugglers, as we all know, people are desperate. Desperate situations demand desperate means. So when you have desperate means, you also have people who will make out of other people's misery. Always, always, always. No matter where you are in the world, there will be people who make out of other people's misery. So you have smugglers. They use dangerous and precarious routes, and one of the most precarious routes is the Mediterranean. It is the biggest graveyard. When you look out at that sea, remember, it is a graveyard, and it is an indictment to who we are. Illegal operators identify the potential for huge profit in facilitating irregular migration, because there is a demand in Europe, of course, for cheap labour. Cheap labour in terms of the caring profession, And we see that here in Ireland. If you look at who are the main people now that you see doing caring profession in homes and residential care, who are they? Filipinos. Caring professional in the hospitality sector. Who are the people that you see in the hospitality sector? Who do the cleaning? Who are doing the washing up? Who are sometimes serving the tables? All Irish people? Beauty parlours. What is the growth of beauty parlours? How many of you go and get your nails done? How many places are there around Dublin today to go and get your nails done? What is the majority of the people who are doing that work?
Asian.
Car washes. Many car washes. Many of them are forced labour. And of course our fishing industry. I'm from Donegal. Killybegs is one of, and Greencastle, two very big fishing parts of the country. Most of the exploitation of people who are working in the fishing industry are migrant workers. So when you look around you and you'll see all these faces. Once you're aware, you'll see them everywhere. And of course, trafficking. One of the biggest things on sale across the world at the moment are human beings, primarily women and young girls. For the sexual entertainment industry, and that is everywhere. It is under our noses here as much as it is somewhere else. We'd like to think it's not here. We'd like to think it's not out there. And we sometimes like to think that the people who avail of these services are very weird or strange people, when there are people like you and me, our neighbours, our politicians, clergy, business people, you name it. The people who avail of sexual exploitation of people are ordinary people. They're not extraordinary people. And Ruhama, if anybody wants to go into their website, did a very good investigation. They had a call service. They put it up for a poster of a woman and her number for you to call the service. And when somebody would call that service, the woman would answer the service saying, you know, I will give you whatever kind of service the people were requiring. And then she'd say, you know, I am being trafficked. And the responses to that, I am being trafficked, were practically ignored by the amount of callers that was received on that. And it is recorded. It was for a very short time that they ran the survey or the investigation. And most of the accents were Irish. So it's just to know that this isn't something. So when you have a restrictive asylum process, all of this is the undercurrent of that. As I said, this is the kind of boats that people come and cross the Mediterranean. Is it one you would get on? No. If you choose to travel, is this your form of travelling? But we have this notion in our heads that when we hear of people coming, risking their lives, that they are really not there, they're not doing this, you know, they're doing this, they're putting their lives in jeopardy as if it is something for fun. People would not get into this situation unless they were leaving a desperate situation. And many of these boats have capsized in the Mediterranean Ocean, with thousands of unrecorded deaths as well as recorded deaths. So like you heard in the reading, we say in our tradition, in particularly the three faiths, the three major faiths, Muslims, Christians and Jews, that you shall love the stranger because you were a stranger in the land of Egypt. But we say this. We say it like we meditated on it at the beginning, but do we really mean it? And that the Lord is your God, is a God of gods, Lord of lords, the great God, mighty and awesome, who is not partial. We think God is very partial, but God is not partial. Takes no bribe, who executes justice for the orphan, the widow, and who loves the stranger, providing them with clothes and food and clothing. We can read this, but when people look for this in our society, our response is not that welcoming. And we, as people of faith, and lots of other faith traditions who believe in the golden rule, are very guilty of just having a passive response. Pope Francis, and I have a lot of issues with Pope Francis, but on the terms of this one, he's pretty good. We have a duty towards our brother and sisters who, for various reasons, have been forced to leave our homeland. We have a duty of justice, of civility, but of solidarity. We have a duty. It's not a choice. We have a duty. As Christians, we have a duty. It's not an added extra. It's not an option. But, you know, when it said in the Deuteronomy text, you were a stranger in a foreign land. And this island comes from that history, because we too were strangers in a foreign land. Between 1845 and 1855, 1.5 million people left this island for good. Not that long ago. Not that long ago. In 1846, 100,000 left, and it peaked in 1847 when 250,000 people left. And we pride, St. Patrick's Day just passed, and what do we think it's great? That across the world, people celebrate St. Patrick's Day. The people who celebrated St. Patrick's Day are from a generation of people who went because they had to leave. Won't it be great when we're able to celebrate national holidays of other people in this island to the same way that we like to see the pride of our national feast being celebrated across the world? I wonder, will we? And over the next 5 years, it averaged at around 200,000 per year. I'm from Donegal. We never recuperated the population that was in the county from those times. It's a county that never has increased its population because, of course, the livelihoods there are not the same. Where do people go for work and whatever, despite it being the most beautiful county in Ireland. So in more recent times, we hear ominous numbers of refugees. Who would have talked about ominous numbers of refugees coming here? The number of refugees was unprecedented. Most of them came on the spur of the moment and in great haste, bringing with them only what they wore. Who said this? What's it referring to?
The Irish.
Anybody hazard a guess?
No.
The Irish.
The Irish going into the States.
Irish going into the States? Anybody else?
It's probably the Taoiseach, is it? Was it the Taoiseach? One of our Taoiseachs.
One of our Taoiseachs. All of you are of an age group to remember 1969,
Yes.
aren't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody from Northern Ireland? Anybody from a border county? What was the fear?
Civil War.
It's all going to come over to us.
Yeah.
There were nearly 10,000 refugees. These are from state papers. They were called refugees in 1972. And this is what they said. Some refugees were demanding. Local authorities butted heads with the Department of Defence. Some refugees thought they were going on a holiday. In 1972, more refugees arrived, and the numbers didn't go below the 2,000 mark until August of that year. Approximately 9,800 refugees in all were handled during the months of July and August in 1972.